Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for this Thriving Thursday. Happy Halloween. Hopefully everybody is all set for the trick-or-treaters to be coming tonight, knocking on the door. Don't know if you're like me, give out one piece of candy and then, maybe eat two or three. I probably shouldn't say that. So this is Sarah Norton. I am the wellness specialist here at Gatehouse Media. And again, we're really excited to be having this S.M.A.R.T mindfulness practices presentation today. Before we get started, just two housekeeping things. So first, as always, the content that's being provided in this particular presentation is not meant to be a medical advice or anything to that effect. It is really informative and it's for your information. If you ever feel that you are not sure about whether or not you should do something, please always consult with your medical provider. The other thing is we just want to, I'll be introducing Marla in a moment, but part of her presentation, she has a worksheet for everybody to kind of, take and be able to utilize that as a resource. So in your navigation screen, hopefully you will see a little link that says S.M.A.R.T worksheet. It is not something that they have to do during the presentation, right? You're just going to refer to it and then work on it.
I'll refer to it and they can choose to use it or jot down ideas on a piece of paper. I mean, in an ideal world, it's like a brainstorming tool to create a practice.
Perfect. So that is just something for you to download and to print and utilize at your leisure. So the lovely voice you just heard was Marla Pelletier. We're really excited that she's back to join us again from Inward Office Yoga. She has done, if you remember, she helped us through some of our mindfulness meditation practices, which if you're not familiar with, they're lovely, they're wonderful. You should check them out. They're on our Simply Good Life YouTube channel. I will be later on today sending out the wellness newsletter that will have a link to that site. So spread the word, make sure that you're letting people know that this information is out there. And Marla, I have to say, I'm actually selfishly very excited about this presentation. Not that I'm not normally excited about your presentations, but as I mentioned to you, I haven't been in the headspace. I have not been able to figure out how to get myself back into being focused to try to find some smart mindfulness practices. So I'm going to be quiet now and let you drive the bus, and really excited that you're here.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate that I'm back here and able to share these tools with you guys. Just to get started, I hope maybe you've seen either the Simply Good Life YouTube channel with some of our practices, and if you have, you'll know what I look like and maybe have a little connection there instead of just a PowerPoint. And there's also the previous two webinars we did where we talked about what is mindfulness and the stress reactivity cycle. And this is kind of a continuation of that. So if you didn't attend those or listen to those, they fit in really well as pieces of the puzzle. But just to give you some context, what we're talking about today is how to tailor a practice, an awareness practice that stimulates mindfulness. So we have to practice something, some activity that actually brings this quality into our life. And it's really great to read about it and hear about it, but it's really all about practice. And so it was partially inspired by Sarah and my discussion, as well as some people I was chatting with that had an idea that we have to be cross-legged, sitting on a cushion with some incense and soft music in the background to be able to create this quality of mindfulness in our life. And it's not really true. And although those practices are really great, they're very useful, a very formal meditation practice does yield really great benefits. And in our last webinar, we talked about some of the research that backs up what actually happens in your body and mind when you practice. But the thing about it is when the rubber meets the road and you're, rushing around in your busy life and you really need these skills, it's like, how do I actually fit this in? How do I actually do it? And I thought the best way to do it was with that worksheet. So if in case you're joining us a little bit late, make sure you check that. Well, on this side it says handout, but check your navigation to see if you can download that PDF, and even have a piece of paper in front of you just to jot down some notes, because I'll go through, how to think about creating a practice for yourself. But one of the things, we can liken this practice is the myth of doing a formal meditation practice as, the epitome. Like if you were to walk into a piano lesson and the piano teacher in your first lesson gives you the Fur-Elise and says, okay, we're going to learn this today. Well, that's great, but we start out really basic. I mean, I don't know if you guys have taken piano lessons, but you start with, the hot cross buns and all the saints go marching in. You start with these very simple keys and fingers, and that's where we all start. We all have this innate quality, this ability to be mindful, but we just have to bring it out more. And really the reason that we want to bring it out more is we want to create more spaciousness, more receptivity, and more calm in our life. And that's not to say like whatever you're doing right now is wrong, but we're really in like a very fast-paced, demanding world. We completely fill our time, and outside demands are often overwhelming, on a day-to-day basis. And so with these practices, it isn't giving you a one-size-fits-all tool, but instead giving you something that you can really tailor based on your needs, your values, your upbringing, your conditioning, and where you are in life. So to give it just some context,
you can do just the down arrow.
Okay.
Or I lied.
Or not.
I lied.
Hold on a second, guys.
Sorry, guys. I think when Sarah's here, there's always technical difficulties. Okay.
So that's what our goal is, to create a mindful awareness practice for yourself that you can implement over the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to give you a challenge, and the challenge is going to be to do this practice 10 times over the next 2 weeks. And again, we're going to decide the location, we're going to decide the length, we're going to decide all these kinds of things, but just 10 sessions over 2 weeks. And I would really, really love for you to give Sarah your feedback on what happens. And I'm also going to do this with you. So I'll share with you at the end the practice that I've decided to do. Oh, perfect. Okay. So the S.M.A.R.T, I kind of gave us a, what do I want to say, a context, a structure to our discussion using this acronym S.M.A.R.T. It's used in business school for, marketing classes about how to develop a goal that you can actually achieve. Okay, so S.M.A.R.T is the acronym. S means specific, and that's what we're going to develop in the end. We're going to have the exact details of what we're accomplishing. Okay, now the interesting part about this is we're going to have the exact details of our practice, but the neat thing about what we're accomplishing is that we might see that problems, situations, relationships change because of the practice. So you might be able to draw a stronger link between your practice and what actually changes in your life after the 10 sessions over 2 weeks. So what is it we're accomplishing is both creating the practice and kind of those spillover benefits.
I'm going to pause for 1 second. I just want to make sure we're not having any technical difficulties. So because I see we have, okay. I just want to make sure, we're going to make sure we're addressing questions and concerns, excuse me. That is what I was worried about. Just want to make sure.
Screen sharing isn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just, thank you guys. I'm going to be checking to see why we are not showing the screen. Hopefully,
I think that.
Did that take care of it, everybody? You honestly,
no,
okay, yay!
Yay!
You honestly have not missed a lot just yet.
Let's go back. Let's go back. Yeah.
No, we'll go back.
Okay.
There we go. So we had the goal.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys. Our goal is to create a mindful awareness practice. And then our next one is SMART goals. Okay, so we're giving a structure to how we develop our awareness practice. Okay, so the S stands for specific, the exact details. What is it we're accomplishing? So both the practice itself, what we're going to do 10 sessions of, and we might recognize after those 10 sessions what it is, what are the spillover benefits in our day-to-day life of our practice. Okay. M is measurable. So how do we know we've reached the goal? So we're going to use kind of numbers to define that. And that'll be on our worksheet, the time of day, the length of practice. That'll help us kind of check the box of actually doing the practice. A means achievable, or let's see, I've heard achievable, ambitious, and attainable. But I like achievable because in this context of meditation, we want to be able to actually do this, to actually implement it. Okay. R is relevant. So this has to do with where you're starting from, right? In the piano lesson example, we're starting from square one, many of us. Maybe for some of you, we're starting to reinvigorate an old practice, but we want to make the practice completely relevant to your life and what's going on. And then time-based, when are you going to get it done by? I kind of answer that question for you. The question that I answered is, what's the length of practice? So this like long-term duration. So over the next 14 days, you're going to try to do 10 sessions. Okay, and I also, as I mentioned, will do it with you. Okay, so what we're going to do, okay, sorry. What we're going to do before we start diving into this worksheet is we're just going to do a little deep breathing and kind of inquiry. We're going to do a little inquiry. So I'm going to have you get into a comfortable seated position with your feet flat on the floor. See if you can flip over phones that are by you or turn them off, and close your eyes. And start off here just noticing how you're sitting. Feet flat on the floor, bottom in the chair. Shoulders over hips. And chin slightly tucked. And take a moment just to tune into your breath, letting the inhalation be long and gentle, letting the exhalation be slow and smooth. And let the belly move with the breath. And I just want you to bring to mind here a recently challenging time. It might be a single situation, or it might be something that comes up over and over again. It might be a situation that's unpredictable and out of your control, somewhere where you need a change to happen. And this might be a situation where you have some inner resources or outer resources that you need to rally to meet it. And right now, your resources are not meeting this challenge. Now hold in your awareness the situation. And I want you to notice any feelings there, any emotions. Notice any physical sensations. And I want you to know that this practice has the power to change this. It's an inside job. Using these practices, these mindfulness practices, changes our perception of what's going on outside of us. And it really resets our set point. It could be your happiness set point, or even your kind of your stress level set point. So things that maybe used to feel really awful don't feel so bad. And take another couple deep breaths. And just imagine that this practice will transform this difficulty. And then drop the head and blink the eyes open. And we're going to take a look at our practice sheet. So maybe you have the download, maybe you're just looking at the PowerPoint itself. But this is meant to be a chance for you to brainstorm, right? The tools that I teach are based in yoga, and the theory here is that all of the tools that we teach are meant to meet you where you're at. Okay, we start with where you're at and we move forward. So, we have this false idea, or maybe it's this myth that, let's say we walk into a traditional yoga asana, traditional yoga posture class, and we go in and the teacher says, touch your toes, right? And you can't touch your toes. But wherever you are, we work with your body as it shows up that day, okay? So what I want you to think about with this first line, let's see, is questions covering? Let's see, I don't know if questions is showing on your screen, guys, but the first line here is location. So when we're considering where we want to practice, you may want to think about how formal or informal you want your practice to be. So formal practice is like that idea that we're sitting cross-legged in a quiet room with a designated, amount of time and a timer, and we've kind of created this environment where we can create spaciousness and calm. Now, that's all fine and dandy, except to be completely honest with all of you, probably the location I practice in the most frequently is my car. My house is nuts. And I work out of my house. I also work out of coffee shops. But really, my car ends up being one of the places where I can completely shut everything out and have a more formal practice. So I want you to consider, if you were adding this practice into your life, where's a location where you can practice? In our Simply Good Life videos, an informal practice that we have taught on there, or that we've posted on there, is walking meditation. Now, the reason that I think of it as informal is because you could be distracted or interrupted, okay? And then you kind of have to do all these micro recoveries in being focused with a single pointed attention. But it's perfectly fine and dandy, okay? An informal practice is you're still practicing, okay? Also, another time where you can incorporate a informal practice is eating food. We teach mindful eating, and sometimes your lunch, the time you separate for your eating, is the only time where you're really divorced from all the other to-dos. And so maybe lunchtime at your desk in your cubicle is the best location. The next thing on here, I'm going to go down actually, instead of across. The next thing I want you to consider is the time of day. And this has tons to do with what's going on in your mind. Some people choose to practice first thing in the morning. You get out of bed, it's quiet, it's dark, especially here in New York right now. When I wake up in the morning, 6 a.m. is very dark and it's quiet, and my mind is still quiet. And so for me, that is an easy time to practice. Now I'll share with you a little later another time that I chose to practice, but 3 in the afternoon was another important time for me to practice, right before my kids got off the bus. And nowadays, I've actually found that the end, like right currently in my life, the end of my day is the best time to practice. So around 8 or 9 o'clock when I'm putting the kids to sleep, or we're settling down for the evening, that is the best time for me because I need to downshift. Okay, so think about it for you. When are you already, for instance, when are you already de-stressing or disengaging with life or zoning out? Okay, that could be an indication of what time of day you need to do a mindful awareness practice. But the other thing to consider is that, Sarah mentioned being in this like right headspace. We tend to fill up our whole day with activity. And so we're not carving out time, we're replacing time. Okay, so you might spend the 10 minutes after breakfast scrolling on Instagram and, liking friends' posts and commenting, and you might just that might be the time that you have to replace. You might automatically come home from work and turn on the TV and zone out in front of that for a half an hour, and maybe that's the time you're going to replace. So really consider, is it, do you already have the spaciousness where you can add it to your day, or you're going to have to replace it? And then I put times per day here because this is one of the things from working at offices I've recommended to many participants in classes, and that's sandwiching stressful time periods with mindful practices. So let's say you have a all-day conference that you've been planning and today's finally the execution day. Maybe your mindfulness practice is first thing in the morning before the conference and last thing in the evening. Okay, so you've set yourself up at the beginning of the day to have more focus and attention in what's going on rather than all your expectations, hopes, and future thinking. And maybe at the end of the day, it's your downshifting. So we're sandwiching a stressful, important, high demand situation with our practice. Let's say it's a meeting with your boss. Maybe your relationship is tense. Okay, so you do a meditation right before and right after. Again, it can be informal, just sitting there and paying attention to your breath. Times per day is another option. So when I'm giving you that challenge of doing it 10 sessions over 14 days, you could do 2 in a day. Okay, the next one here is supplies. So again, in my examples, I'll talk a little bit more about supplies, but think about, do you need a chair to sit on? Would you prefer to sit on a cushion on the floor? Do you prefer to have headphones on? What are the supplies you need? And I write that down here because it's one of those obstacles where your brain could use the excuse to say, I'm not going to practice today because I forgot my headphones. Well, we're getting really specific. To be able to do your practice 10 times over the next 14 days, you need those headphones, or you need that essential oil. By the way, I highly recommend lilac or lavender. It's a really nice essential oil to just help you calm down. Another thing too, some people choose exercise as their mindfulness practice. Maybe it's sneakers. Okay, so really think about what supplies you'll need. Length of time. Length of time is what is achievable to you. What can you actually fit in? So I mentioned that 10 minutes after breakfast, if you're scrolling through Instagram, maybe it's only 10 minutes, okay? Maybe you can substitute out the 30 minutes on Netflix. Think about a length of time that you can actually do. Now they say that 20 minutes of mindfulness practices actually change the structure of your brain if you do it regularly. So that means that you have new neural pathways that are being built. That means that you actually have an increase in the density of your gray matter. So as you age, there are certain parts of the brain that actually get less dense, and they say that's part of the aging process. But now we know, because our brain responds to what our mind is doing. So the hardware, the brain, the structure itself responds to what the mind is doing. Now we know that it can directly be affected by meditation. They've compared beginning meditators to before like a mindfulness-based stress reduction program and those same meditators after the program and looked at their brains. They've also compared people that have been meditating for years and years, like monks and like Tibetan monks and Indian monks. They've compared their brains to just average Joes and seen changes in the gray matter. Okay, and then consecutive days. So I've kind of answered that for you. I'd like you to do it over the next 2 weeks. But for those of you who are achievers, like my husband, he was helping me remember the acronym S.M.A.R.T. And you know, for his A, I say attainable, achievable. He says ambitious. And so there's some of you out there that are like, okay, it's attainable, it's achievable. And some of you out there are like, I need an ambitious goal. So if you want an ambitious goal, don't do the 14 days like I'm saying, do a longer stretch, okay? And this makes your practice definitely more specific. Okay, now what's the activity you're going to do? All right, so meditation is one choice. The anchor you choose to focus your attention on is one choice. So some of the anchors, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Won't go into anchors right now, but think about right now is a good place to start the current activities where you feel a sense of flow. Okay, so flow here we're defining as like timelessness, where maybe you feel a challenge or you feel enjoyment, where your whole mind and body is focused on what's going on right now. Okay, what are activities where you feel a state of flow, where you feel presence and pleasure? So I want you to focus in too on pleasure. Your brain is going to really get addicted and enjoy the things that it perceives as pleasurable. Okay? So right now, what are you doing that bring about this quality of mindfulness, this fully paying attention in the present moment while suspending judgment? Okay? From talking to groups and from my own experience, I'll list a few. Looking at art, like going to an art gallery, going to a museum, playing or listening to music, walking in nature. Walking in nature is as simple as leaving your home and walking down the street. Cleaning your house. That's not one of mine, but I've heard of this. What'd you say?
It's not one of mine.
It's not one of yours. Playing golf or knitting. Playing fetch with your dog. Spending time with a grandmother or a child. Mowing the lawn. My husband said he feels it mowing the lawn. He can really zone out and enjoy the smells and the sights. Okay, so just think about where you already feel flow, because like I said, I want this to meet you where you're at. Both potentially things you're already doing, and you're just stimulating the sense of mindfulness, and things that you can build on. Okay, so if you already are a musician, maybe it's listening to music. All right, and as we're developing this practice, what are some of the obstacles to your practice? I mean, really easy ones are interruptions. Like if you decide to practice in your cubicle at work, there's always a chance that someone's just gonna walk in and start talking to you, right? Okay. If you decide to do it in your car, what's an obstacle? I guess for me, maybe it would be, I've got 4 kids. My car sometimes is not very clean. That might be an obstacle. Maybe I just need to make sure the space that I'm sitting in is clean. Schedule conflicts. Let's say you plan on the time of day of 8 p.m., but on one particular day, your child has a baseball game. Okay, so what are you gonna do? Maybe it's an outdoor activity and an obstacle is the weather. All right, so I want you to come up with the obstacles and then come up with the ways that you can move through them. All right, another thing, when we're building a new habit, it's important to have a cue. All right, a cue could be a note that you write yourself. A cue could be an alarm on your phone. It could be a schedule change, like as soon as you walk in the door, arriving home, that's the time you do it. But a cue, especially again with a new practice, with a new habit we're cultivating, we want to have some kind of blinking red light that tells us now's the time. Okay, and then at the end is where you write what your specific practice looks like. And when you've done your specific practice over the 2 weeks, the goal may be the way that it changes, the spillover benefits, the way that it changes difficult situations in your life, relationships, or problems, your perception of problems. But I really want you to consider what's realistic here for you. Things that have come up when I've talked to groups. One person has said, you know, I don't want to sacrifice my family time in the evening. So is it realistic for you to do your practice with your child? Is it realistic for you to do your practice with your spouse? Is it realistic for you to say, I'm going to walk my dog, because that's something I already do, and have it be more of a mindful walk, or a walk where I'm immersed in nature? And then one of the things that I like, you know, I liken a lot of these practices to just our traditional exercise. A lot of people use workout buddies for practice. And this is something you could do. Maybe there's somebody else in your office who you want to be your practice buddy. And here's the thing, when you have a practice buddy, because we're stimulating this muscle of mindfulness, which is, again, I'll repeat, paying attention on purpose in the present moment while suspending judgment. We're not going to judge the other person if they have a really good practice or really bad practice or they miss practice, but the buddy is there as a cue, as a reminder, as encouragement, okay, to keep going. And I know even from personal experience, sometimes that workout buddy, the awareness practice buddy, is a kind of vulnerable place, okay, because these practices are very personal. They're very personal because we're going right, you know, we're going into the mind, we're going into the emotions, we're going into the body, and they can bring up vulnerable kinds of vulnerabilities, I should say. Okay, so I would love for you to fill this out. I would love it even more if you wanted to share it with us, but really what I want you to do is to try to create a structure for your practice and then do it. Do it. Okay, so I want to give you a couple of examples of ways that we have used this, or I've used it, or friends that I have used it. So as example one, my challenge in this example was my daughter after school. She would get home and she would throw her bag on the driveway, throw her jacket, be full of emotions and pain and suffering. And I would have to get her to calm down, feed her food. Now, what I realized early on is that if I was in a reactive space, I would yell at her, I'd tell her she was being inappropriate. You know, it did not help either of us. So what I decided to do was make my practice the 20 minutes right before she'd get off the bus to do a deep relaxation or breathing exercise. So it was every weekday, it was on the couch. And if I missed the practice, well, you know, I didn't have this worksheet when I was doing that practice, but I would suggest if you did something like this, what would happen if you missed that practice? You know, what would be the other option? What would be the obstacle that you could, or sorry, the solution if you did miss it? Okay, and then another example. So this presentation was also inspired not only by my conversation with Sarah, but my friend who is a VP at a company, and it's a new job for her, and she was having really high general anxiety. She has 3 small children. It was her first job after having those kids, and she couldn't think clearly. Her anxiety was really clouding her mind. And so in advising her on a practice, you know, first I asked her what's actually achievable, like what amount of time in a day can you actually replace with a practice? And she said, well, it's the 10 minutes after I am done blow drying my hair. The kids are sleeping. My husband's also getting ready. I've got space right there. And I said, okay, well, I know you love music. Can you put on some headphones, sit on your couch, and just listen with your full attention? Now, this is stimulating that single pointed attention, okay? Fully paying attention with all of our resources on one thing. And so that's the type of practice she's decided to do. She has 10 minutes of focused attention on music in the morning while the children sleep. Now, possible obstacles she could have is what if the children wake up early? You know, a solution that I might have for that is throw on a TV show and sit next to them and do it. So really think, where are those times, where are those spaces where you can do this with something enjoyable? For her, it was music. So her brain and her body are going to be like, oh, I really want to listen to that particular song this morning. Okay, so she begins to crave it and build it in. Another thing about that, just to mention, when we're trying to kind of overcome stressful experiences, sometimes we see life as disordered, or we see the situation as disordered or out of our control. When we really create this practice, we're also trying to create a level of feeling of control, a level of feeling of order, okay? And so when she's choosing those 2 pieces of music, or when, I guess in my third example, when I'm choosing to clean up my house, I'm trying to calm my brain down to have some things in order and within my control when maybe other things feel out of control. So my third example here was cleaning your house. So it's not my first choice to do a mindfulness practice of cleaning the house, but I have had some nice conversations about people that do enjoy cleaning. And the reason I bring this up is because there's different levels of mind and body engagement in all of these practices. So in the first one, I've got a kind of subtle engagement of my mind and my body, relaxation and breathing. Okay, it's a subtle touch. It's a more strong, more gross commitment. Well, gross we use is like it's a very strong feeling. That's the way I'm using gross. It's a more gross sensation and engagement of the mind when we're cleaning, and the body, right? We've got the whole body moving, we've got the whole mind focused, and we've even got senses involved. Our eyes are looking at our bathroom sink, our fingers are touching our bathroom counter, we're taking in the smells of the cleaning supplies. You know, here in my notes I wrote, buy essential oils before you do this instead of sniffing in the Lysol.
Right.
Clean with the natural essential oils, right? But again, with this third example, the challenge is that life feels out of control. Maybe I've just lost my job, maybe my finances are spiraling down, and the challenge is that life feels out of my control. Well, here I'm choosing a mindful practice where I'm pulling back in my control and I'm cleaning my home. Okay, I'm getting my bottle of, diluted essential oils to spray. I'm fully engaging my body, my mind, my senses to be able to reset that set point, that stress set point, that nervous system set point. Another thing this reminds me of is my husband was deployed with the Army, and the day he got back, my mind, my body, everything was like out of control. I was nervous, I was anxious, I was wanting to make the house pretty, I was scattered. And so I was like, you know what? I've never done my adult coloring book. I had that sitting on the shelf, never did it. And I said, I'm gonna sit down and do this. And that was a great way in that moment to stimulate the muscle of mindfulness. I really looked at the colors, I really made conscious decisions, I really sank into that process. And it did calm me down significantly. Okay, and here I wrote in the third example, the cue that I could do if I was cleaning my home for my mindfulness practice is write the letter M for mindfulness on my bottle of diluted essential oils to remember to practice. Okay, so these are different things to just think about. How much do we have to engage our body and our mind in our practice? I'm sure there's runners out there that use running for that feeling of flow. And then the last thing that I really want to suggest to you in creating this practice is we all love a good app, right? The app I recommend that could support you is Insight Timer. I didn't write it on here, but Insight, INSIGHT Timer. I enjoy using that one because it's flexible. I think you can set an alarm and it can like send you a notification when it's time to practice. There's hundreds of different kinds of meditations on there. If you decide to use it for our practice, I suggest using the same one over and over again. There's just a simple bell, like a timer and a bell, so you can turn it on, do your practice, and have the bell remind you to end the practice. And it's all free. There is a paid option, but I only use the free one, and there is a lot of options on the free one. So remember, this practice is meant to stimulate. Actually, stimulate is not at all correct, because when you think about the nervous system, the calm part of us is resting beneath the crazy part of us.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So we have to turn off the crazy to have the calm. Sarah. So we're here in our practice, we're trying to allow the calm to arise from that deep part inside of us, okay? And it's not a new skill, it's in there, it's in you innately, right? Kids are like some of the best teachers of this because they have that natural calm and engagement with life. So this isn't a new skill, we're just remembering a capability that's already within us. And if you look at the definition of mindfulness, which is sati in Buddhism, it actually is a word that means remembering. It has an aspect of that quality of remembering in it. So, should we do a quick practice? Or
Well, let me do this. I'm going to check the questions first, being mindful of time. What Marla would like to do in a few minutes after we check some of the questions is for anybody who would like to stay on to do a practice, please do. Please continue to join us. For those of you who are not able to continue to stay on, please, if you need to, go ahead and disconnect. It is never the intention of wellness to stress people out. So please feel if you do need to disconnect, you can. We will be posting the this on the YouTube channel. So we did have one question that somebody asked about, can it just be quiet meditation? Which I think basically, so it doesn't actually have to be an action. It doesn't have to be like, you know, coloring or doing something. If you're somebody, right, this is my takeaway, that if you are somebody who can actually sit and, you know, kind of tune into your breathing or, you know, just be calmly, then yes, of course, if that's your, you know, right, is that?
Yeah, so like the meditations, you would find it in the Insight Timer, or if you're already familiar with, you know, quietly meditating and how to use an anchor like the breath and the body for your focus, that's great. The focus was more for those people that don't think that they're ready yet to be sitting quietly and still. And so what are all the versions of developing mindfulness that we can do in action?
So that sounds, so hopefully that answered your question about that. I don't see any other questions at this point in time. The two things, so I think what we'll do is I will wrap up this part of it and then turn it over, because I have a feeling I'm going to be like real chill after we you know, do this. So I'm going to just remind everybody that next month on November 21st, Marla's actually coming back to help us talk about how to get a little movement. So, you know, we're talking a lot about, you know, kind of mindfulness and resting and that sort of thing, but we also want to focus on how we get some movement throughout our days. And so we've joked around about the term deskercises and that sort of thing. So we're looking forward to that. I also have to say too that as much as I hate housework, I have found that when I feel as though I am out of control, for some reason laundry calms me down, because I know there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I know it'll come back again, but there's you know, some structure and some order, and you know, so it is finding those, because we are expected to like multitask so much. It's really nice to, you know, to be able to have those examples of, you know, just being mindful when you're doing the laundry, or even going out and spending $5 and getting the coloring book and just really appreciating how does the crayon feel when you're, you know, putting it to paper and that sort of thing. So those are some really great examples. So what I'll do is I'm going to thank everybody for joining us. If you would like to stay for the practice, please do. I am now going to once again turn it over to Marla, and I'm about to get chill.
All right, so we're going to do a meditation that's got a gross focus, in the sense that we're going to focus in on the body. So for a lot of us, especially when we're at work, if we go all the way to like focusing on our breath, sometimes that's a hard transition to make. Okay, our senses are focused outward all day on really, you know, the strongest color, the loudest voice, these very strong cues outside of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn inside, but we're going to use these really large parts of our body to focus in. Okay, so come to your seated posture, again, turning off any potential dings or beeps or closing doors if you anticipate an interruption. And then have the feet flat on the floor under the knees, knees in line with the hips, and shoulders over the hips. Lift through the crown of the head, tucking the chin slightly. And let the hands rest, palms open in the lap. And take a moment just to notice how you're sitting. Feel the connection of the feet on the ground and the warmth of the feet in the shoes. Notice the bottom in the chair. And notice the points of connection of the bottom in the chair. And with the next exhalation, really let the body get a little heavier in the chair. We're going to move our awareness through the different parts of the body. So as I say the different parts of the body, just let your attention move to that place. Single pointed attention, just like a spotlight on that place. Also let the word of the part of the body resound in the mind, mentally repeating it. And you can mentally picture the part of the body as well. So notice at first if you're on an inhalation or an exhalation. Continue to allow the breath to be deep and gentle. And then bring your full attention to your right hand. Focus in on your right fingers. Palm of the hand, back of the hand. Wrist, right forearm, elbow, upper arm, shoulder, right armpit, right side of the ribs, right side of the waist, right hip, thigh, knee, lower leg, ankle, top of the foot, sole of the foot, toes, left hand fingers, palm of the hand, back of the hand, wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, shoulder, armpit, left side of the ribs, left side of the waist, hip, thigh, knee, lower leg, ankle, top of the foot, sole of the foot, left toes. Bring the attention to the crown of the head, forehead, eyes, temples, nose, cheeks, ears, mouth, jaw, front of the neck, collarbones, center of the chest, whole of the chest, upper belly, lower belly, groin, buttocks, lower back, middle back, upper back, back of the head. And then bring the attention to both of the legs together. Bring the attention to both of the arms together. And bring the attention to the whole front of the body and the whole back of the body. And then spread the attention through the whole body. Watch the breath move the whole body. And then zero in on one part of the body, single pointed, laser-like attention. And then expand the attention through the whole body. And then once again, laser focus on one part of the body. And then expand through the whole body. Different types of meditation can widen the attentional breadth and can help with focus and prioritizing through that single focus. So we're building these new capabilities, remembering how to do single tasking. And then take another couple deeper breaths, pressing out the breath just a little bit longer. And then when you're ready, sit up a little bit straighter in your chair. Feel the feet on the ground. Feel the edges of the body. And then tuck the chin to blink the eyes open. So thank you all for practicing. Those of you who stuck around and did the practice, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us, Marla. Thank you so much. And everybody, again, happy Halloween. Be safe, have fun, enjoy the candy, but enjoy it in moderation. And take care. We'll talk to you soon. Oh, and if you do have questions for either me or Marla, send them to ghmwellness@gatehousemedia.com, and I will make sure that Marla gets them. And again, thank you guys, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.